Meow.
Welcome back to Aphantasia Meow, everyone. My name's Alec, if we haven't already met. And so I had a bit of a different idea for today's episode. Now, as you may know, I'm about to start releasing some of the results from the recent case study program that I ran. And a little bit of preview. You know, there were 4 participants, and 4 out of 4 experienced something new. So some form of breakthrough that wasn't, that was outside of their norm. So be looking forward to seeing some of that. Now, what I want to do today is talk about whether or not this idea of curing aphantasia is actually possible. First off, though, I don't really like that term cure, and I'll talk about why. So I prefer to say that somebody has affected their experience of aphantasia. Cure, I feel like the word, anyway, implies that it's a disorder that needs a cure. I know some scientific circles are calling it a disorder. I don't really see it like that. And I'll set the record straight, too, that I don't think that everyone even needs to be cured. I think however people think, whether it's aphantasia, hyperphantasia, aphantasia, however thoughts are occurring to someone, that's a beautiful thing and that's unique to them. So that's beautiful. And in fact, if we do go, later down the line and find out that more and more people can affect their aphantasia and come out of the experience of aphantasia, I hope that some people experiencing aphantasia choose not to come out of aphantasia and choose to retain their aphantasia because, like I said, having different types of thinkers is very valuable. My other issue with the word cure is that the mind's eye seems a lot like a skill. It's more like a skill than anything. So if somebody can't play piano, we don't say that they need to find a cure for their piano deficiency, right? No, it's a skill. It's an instrument that you actually learn how to play with proper practice. I also want to mention those comments in the beginning of the video. I chose to kind of showcase some of that because that's the broad sort of vibe around aphantasia right now when somebody brings up on a forum or something like that. Can we affect this? Can we fix or cure or change our experience of aphantasia? Typically, it's met with that kind of vibe, like, nope, no way, no possible way to change it. But what's interesting is some of those people saying that are indeed scientifically minded too, and there's not really any evidence yet that we can't affect it. Actually, there's an amassing mound of anecdotal evidence, as we'll look into today, that shows the opposite. And then that featured comment, that one came off Reddit, and I actually asked for the user's permission to feature that one. Now, it's important to note, though, that in that comment, they were describing something that they experienced that was new in the mind's eye, like something they never experienced before, and I call that breakthrough in my channel when something out of the norm pops into their mind. But they haven't retained the ability, so it was a momentary experience of the mind's eye, but it's not something that's continuing. But there have been people that have experienced mind's eye past just the momentary first breakthrough too. What I want to do though in this video is just start building some of the case, some of the case that people can actually change the experience of their mind's eye, whether it's they're starting from aphantasia going up or whether they're starting from hypophantasia going higher into phantasia or whatever. Because there's a growing amount of people, accounts online, accounts from people on forums and different my YouTube channel too, where people are saying that they've made progress. And these are people that I really haven't worked with. Maybe they saw some of my content, but they just decided to try to make progress on their own, and they are doing so. So even though I don't think that someone needs to cure aphantasia, I think that if somebody wants to experience the mind's eye, wants to create a mind's eye experience for themselves, I want them to have an option just because it's their genuine desire to experience the mind's eye. So that's where all my work is coming from. I'm actually not going to show, who it was or what group it was in or anything like that. They'll stay anonymous. The stuff on YouTube, though, I'll be showing, who it was, what, timestamp maybe or whatever. So now this isn't quite, up to the level of a peer studied review yet, but just as a little preview, I am intending to use the case study program I just wrapped up and using that as like a pilot trial, so to speak, for something that will be peer reviewed in the future. Now, one last thing I want to say before we start looking at examples is that these are going to be anecdotal accounts, right? Just people describing their own experience, their own perception of their mind, and how they've been able to access different things. So the point that I want to make, though, is that even though they're anecdotal at this point, they shouldn't be just tossed away or thrown away, because most of the conversation around aphantasia right now is anecdotal, in a sense that, there's no testing method that we know of that can absolutely say that somebody has aphantasia other than taking an fMRI scan, but those aren't widely available. And so for the most part, we're all just kind of going around self-prescribing these things for ourselves and then trying to figure out where we rest and how to go about life and figuring out the different aspects of it in a purely subjective way. So these examples are going to be from people that were able to change their conscious perception and experience something different in thought form. So what's important about this, these are all coming from aphantasia groups, right? Where people join these groups as a result of them finding out that they did experience aphantasia. Now, we could argue that, okay, these people aren't properly tested. We don't know for sure if they're starting from aphantasia, and that's valid. Maybe some of them are indeed starting from being hypophantasic rather than aphantasic, but we don't have that kind of measurement yet. All we can go off of is people's subjective kind of self-diagnosis. So let's continue. Until more information starts coming out, of course, like the case study program results, and then in the future, more fMRI studies of where somebody starts and where somebody finishes when they're training their mind's eye. This is the best we got. Okay, so here we'll start with some of the examples that I've run across on Facebook, like different Facebook groups and forums and stuff. Just to keep things private, I'm not going to show the person's, username or profile picture. I'll just be reading their comment. This person says, I've made gradual progress via meditation and putting real effort into visualizing people. Like, I'll look at a picture for a couple of moments, then close my eyes and try to picture that person actually moving and doing things. This has absolutely produced results, though they are still erratic and unreliable. I can now sometimes remember the faces of my students, even when I'm home and marking their papers. There's no way I could have done so 10 years ago. This person says, I started with zero ability and couldn't even recall my wife's face of 36 years at the time. Now I can replay my day in a visual knowing way, although without any literal visualization effect. I know what visualization can be like because I dream vividly. It took a lot of work to make the progress I have. I've gone from zero to weak auditory imagery as well. I had zero mental imagery in any sense when I started. I've covered some of what I did in other posts and comments. I also started another aphantasia group to focus on acquisition of mental imagery. Yeah. So what's interesting about this account here is that, he mentions being able to dream vividly. So he knows what visualization can be, when in fact, dreaming visually is way more vivid than any mind's eye activity is going to be when you're awake. Typically, the mind's eye activity when somebody's awake is going to be quite vague, unless they're like upper spectrum hyperphantasic. It's going to be quite vague, kind of distant feeling. So it does sound like that he activated some of that kind of visual thought processing, aka Fantasia, even if it's kind of low on the spectrum. This is from that same user that I just mentioned, and just one more comment from them. He just mentions, nothing is going to be a magic bullet. I've managed to go from full nothing mental imagery wise in all senses to better than nothing. I no longer feel cheated, still working on improvements. I follow all the clues no matter how weak for mental imagery, even if it seems to be only a placebo. Now, I like to bring that up because in a lot of senses, in a big sense, I've realized that jump-starting the mind's eye, especially if you're starting from zero, is kind of like jump-starting a placebo in your own head, because you aren't having the conscious perception of visual thought. But then if you can kind of start to convince yourself that it can happen and that it is happening, that you are working towards breakthrough, then the door opens up in your mind to be able to start perceiving visual thought. So in a sense, it's all placebo. It's all you making up the breakthrough in your head. So this person actually messaged me reporting some progress. Up early, did your first exercise and starting to see dull flashes of colored objects in the room from exercise. I'm sure these were old neural pathways from the path and are being re-energized. So that I remember that message, getting that message. I woke up and had that message show up in my inbox, and it was just cool to wake up to somebody making progress on their own without working with me. So awesome. This person says, I'd swear I had flashes of images in my mind this morning, not dreams, but conscious images. When I looked at them, they were gone. I've been trying to conjure images for months since I found out I was aphantasic. But this is the first time something seemed to be there. More news as it occurs. Awesome. Any progress is great progress. One more. This person wrote quite a bit here, but we'll kind of read through it. So, I've been trying to cure my aphantasia in the recent days, and I thought I would share my progress. I've managed to vastly improve my ability to visualize by doing 2 exercises in the video below, and he linked one of my videos, which is fun. Originally, the exercises gave me a light headache, which is not out of the norm. He goes on to say, I still don't get a clear picture if I try to visualize when I'm awake, but it seems my feel for 3D space has improved. The teacher below says the students often say they can almost see while still not seeing, which is exactly how I experience it. Like I can subconsciously see. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I do hear that all the time, that when people start to activate their mind's eye, it's like, oh, it felt like I could perceive what the thing looked like I was seeing it, but I wasn't seeing anything. And a lot of times that's how the mind's eye starts, is it's like this kind of general sort of feeling or perception that you can see what something looks like, but it's not ever actually seeing anything. So he put it quite well there. It's also important to note that, yeah, sometimes for people developing the sense of 3-dimensional space in their head, like let's say you think of walking by your friend or something, or a friend walking by you, if you can kind of sense where that person is in your mind, even though you can't visually see it, that for some people helps to develop more of a platform with which to build visual thought processes on. So great. This person says, I've had a similar experience. I would also have described myself as completely mind blind, but after practicing, I was able to see some imagery, but only while I'm awake. It also freaks me out, so I'm taking a break. I get it. It's stuff that happens that's new can oftentimes be a little freaky, even for me. So an important note from that one too is that it can all be at somebody's own personal pace, you know? Like you don't have to practice if you don't want to. You can get to a certain point and then stop and level out. And there's also these mental switches that I teach people how to activate, which you could learn just by practicing meditation and stuff, where, you know, you can turn mental capabilities on and off. So if stuff starts to get overwhelming, it's good just to take a break and come back to it later if you want. I'm going to start scouring through my YouTube comments because I know I've ran across quite a few over the years where people were saying, oh, like, hey, thanks for the videos. I made progress. So let's see if we can find any. Okay, this is the first comment that I'm running across, where somebody's reporting some measure of progress. So let's check it out. She says, Aphantasia Meow, since I found out about all of this 3 days ago, I've been spending quite a lot of time every day just trying to picture an apple. I might have seen a spot of the color red, or I just hoped I had. Now that's an interesting point because a lot of this, actually all of it, the experience of the mind's eye and how you're experiencing your thought has to do with how you're perceiving how your thoughts are occurring to you in your mind. I'm finding out more and more that that's likely what it is. It all comes down to perception. So if she started to have the perception that there was the color red, likely her conscious mind would start to experience that. So people ask me all the time, I had this happen, but I don't know, maybe I made it up. And when I say that, when I hear that said to me, it's kind of like, yes, you did make it up. In fact, it's all made up in your head. So here I found somebody that said, I think I was able to see the tiniest bit of blue from imagining my bottle, but it was only for like 2 seconds and it was really hard, but I'm glad. So small, but there you go. One thing I encourage my students to do is like even any tiny bit of progress that one is able to notice is worth noting, worth journaling about, worth celebrating, really, because if you can celebrate the small stuff as you enter into more mind's eye activity, then it'll just build the case in your mind for more to be experienced. So here's one. I managed to create an image in my mind's eye for the first time in my life today. Although it wasn't the one I was aiming at, a shed rather than a bicycle. All I can say is, wow, It really is a visual image and not the concept of an image. I achieved it just after I woke this morning, lying in bed with my eyes closed. I was definitely awake when it happened, but I couldn't recall the image once I opened my eyes. Now, I did go on to point out to Joe here that it does sound like he's describing a hypnagogic image. Many people experiencing aphantasia do describe having hypnagogic images as well. Cool thing is he was able to access it for the first time. He had never even had that experience. So that's progress in and of itself. Searching through all these YouTube comments takes forever. This person here says, thanks. I tried this once before in 2019 and I managed to construct a vivid picture after a solid hour of trying. This time I think I'll try writing down key anchor phrases before visualizing. Though I think that this user did mention in a different comment that they weren't starting from full aphantasia, they were maybe considered themselves hypophantasic, if I remember correctly. Now here's an example of somebody likely finding progress or making progress within prophantasia. Let's take a look. I'm really struggling to understand this concept of ignoring the blank space and not trying to project. I have had a few minor successes with projecting very faint shapes into the blackness or walls in a dark room, but it's difficult and is giving me headaches and eye strain. Yeah, and that's typically how like projecting images starts, because mind's eye is different than projecting images, right? So it typically starts with seeing very faint kind of outlines of white shapes. And I've even come across people that have described aphantasia, but yet just also describe being able to do this type of projecting images. So curious. So this one's really interesting. I'm going to read the whole comment just for context. Can you explain how this happened? So yesterday morning, I saw a post on Twitter and I basically found out that people could actually vaguely see images in their head. I had never seen one, so I focused all day and eventually I started seeing very vague images. But then it just kept getting better and better. And then I believe I experienced prophantasia because it was exactly how you described it. It was so vivid and I was traveling through the universe and it looked realer than life. Is it weird I could go from never seeing a mental image to having this apparently rare ability just in the course of one day? And then we went back and forth a little bit. But yeah, what's interesting about this is, he had this person had the conscious experience of not seeing images. And within a little bit of practice, just broke, it seems, into full mind's eye experience, and then maybe even beyond. It sounds like potentially like a lucid dream type experience that he initiated consciously. I've seen it happen only a few times where somebody starts from aphantasia and then ends up breaking into like a really dynamic breakthrough that was even so much that it surprised me, where I'm sitting on the other end of the phone going, are you sure it's that intense? Like that's a lot of progress to be made in such a short amount of time. So I have seen it happen a couple times, but it's not the norm. So yeah, this person apparently was just one of those cases. Here's one breakthrough for Jake. He says, I believe I'm very kinesthetic, and so when I look at something with my eyes, I feel the object with my eyes. In its details, in a sense, When I close my eyes, I feel with my eyes what I want to remember earlier, like my clock. I can now get flashes of pictures of the clock, flashes of detail I felt with my eyes. I believe as I continue this, I could be on my way to being hyperphantasia as a tool in NLP. So yeah, so he had like a very clear spatial sense, or like sounds like tactile sense, where if he was looking at something, he could think of what it felt like. And then that started to blend with the actual image of the item itself. So there's actually an exercise I do on my sessions where people hold an item and they're describing it, and then they describe it with their eyes closed as if they were still looking at it. And so it sounds kind of like he stumbled across that exercise on his own, which is great. Okay, so I think that I've seen other comments on my YouTube channel where people were making progress, but I wasn't very good about remembering what videos they were on and stuff, and I'm trying to sort through 2 years of of data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to kind of the mother lode at this point of people describing breakthrough moments, moments outside of their norm. And to find those accounts, the best place to turn at this point is my Discord server that I launched a couple months ago, because those people in there all came in, from varying walks of life and just saw my announcement and wanted to work on their mind's eye for themselves. So they started working at it. And there are people in there that started from aphantasia and started to experience some Aphantasia stuff. There's people that started from Aphantasia or hypophantasia that are coming up on the spectrum and experiencing more vivid imaginations. So let's take a look in there. Okay, so here we go. Welcome to the Mind's Eye Development Discord. If you're not in there yet, welcome. Hopefully we'll see you in there soon. So here we go. So this person says, I don't know if this counts as a breakthrough because it wasn't intentional imagery, but once I meditated, I saw a brownish painting and that looked like this painting from Van Gogh's Starry Night. The colors weren't the same, but the drawing style and the basic idea of scenery was. It was just for a brief moment, but it was there and I was aware of it. He also mentions the second breakthrough. Second breakthrough was after I went to the cinema late at night to watch the new Lion King movie. After the movie ended, I was able to create light outlines of lions on the back of my eyelids. Awesome. So he's mentioning, some projection type breakthroughs, which is fantastic. This person mentions, yesterday I was able to see low light scenes of people. I'm usually a full aphant, and it was quite exciting. It was difficult to keep going, and today when I woke up from a dreamless night, I couldn't do it anymore. We'll be doing a lot more image streaming. Last time I had my first lucid dream. Sweet. So breakthrough not only in being able to visualize stuff, but in a lucid dream too. This person says, I'm not sure if this is normal, but I can now sometimes visualize colors. I have to be in the right frame of mind, but best case, I can now think of blue and slowly get to fill up my vision of my field of vision. That's all I can do so far, but it blows the aphants don't have the brain connections theory right. So yeah, we could talk about that in another video, but and what they say right after that's very important too. One thing I've noticed is sometimes I swear that I'm starting to see something, and as soon as I try to focus, it goes all black. It's hard to explain, but it feels like my subconscious just shuts it down. I've seen this so many times. And I think the reason is because as you start to access visual imagery, especially if you're coming from aphantasia, it's likely that your brain is starting to operate in a slightly different way than you're used to, and that's why the visual images are then perceivable. Now, as soon as somebody goes, ooh, and they become conscious and they kind of get excited about the visual image, their conscious mind starts kicking in, and the thought processes that they're used to accessing kick in. And what's your usual thought process? Not visualizing. So as soon as your conscious mind kicks in again, it goes, oh, shut that down, and it just kicks into the default mode, kicks it off. So that's my idea anyway. This person says, I don't know if this counts as a breakthrough, but a week ago I was working on a project and I had to stay up all night. I felt really tired and suddenly a train passed in front of me. I was hallucinating for the first time in my life as far as I could remember. Though it was brief, only half a second, I felt both terrified and amazed at the same time. The image had opacity around 80% and had a bit dreamy texture like most movie portrays what hallucination looks like. So this person says that they weren't really able to see things in their mind's eye, but they were practicing walking around spatially because at least they can do that in their mind. And last night in bed, I was just imagining spatially walking out of my house and down the road. I couldn't see anything, but I was just aware of where I was and what objects were around me. I did this for about 5 minutes and I started very slightly being able to see stuff, still very faint. But I carried on for an hour and eventually things became a little clearer. So making progress there. A little bit later on, they posted, starting to get flashes of imagery, very low opacity images in my mind while my eyes are open now. Could only do it before with eyes closed. Still very detailed, realistic images and animated. And this person, when they first joined into the server, they were experiencing aphantasia like they said that they had some spatial awareness, but that was about it. This person's saying, I wasn't able to do this visualization a week ago. My thoughts were in descriptive detail, whereas now I can sort of make of certain objects, but at the same time can't. I was only relying on the exercise given in the first video. Okay, so those are some accounts from the Discord server. Now there are more in there. I just didn't want to take too long and describe too many. So if you want, you can go ahead and join the Discord server and search through those breakthroughs for yourself. Pretty interesting, you know. Now, what I hope this has done is just created more of a platform that people actually can make progress in the mind's eye, whether it's prophantasic sort of visual imagery, whether it's mind's eye imagery, some, drastic, some quite subtle, but that, building the case that somebody can indeed make progress. Now, the next couple videos that I'm going to be releasing are going to be detailing the case study program. And the reason why I wanted to do this beforehand is because going into the case study program, like I said, I had 4 participants and 4 were able to experience something new that was outside of their norm, whether it was visualization or other stuff. We'll get into it. So hopefully we set, the stage with this, and then next couple of videos, you can expect to hear some actual details and how somebody experienced thought before and after training it for themselves. So that's all we got to talk about today. I'm excited to release some of those details coming up. And as always, like, share, subscribe to the video if you found it informative. We'll be chatting soon. All right, bye.